Dr. Patricia Nguyen didn't drop the folder. She didn't gasp, didn't reach for the phone, didn't call anyone into the room. She just went quiet and set the paper down flat on the desk between us like it might make less noise that way. 4 seconds, maybe 5. Long enough for the air conditioner to click on somewhere behind the wall. Long enough for my grandson to shift in the chair beside me, one sneaker tapping the floor, still not understanding why Grandpa's face had changed. Mr. Delgado, she folded her hands. How long has Tyler been taking these vitamins? Tyler, 9 years old, missing his front tooth, a boy who 3 days ago couldn't keep his eyes open past 6 in the evening even after 11 hours of sleep the night before. I looked at him, then back at her. 3, maybe 4 months, I said. That's what his stepfather told me. Mr. Delgado, I need you to think carefully. Has anyone besides his stepfather been giving him these? I felt something cold settle behind my ribs, the kind of cold that doesn't come from the room temperature. Welcome to Silver Fox Stories. I'm your host, and if you're new here, understand something up front. Every person in this story earned exactly what happened to them. Comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to see where family loyalty runs out. Now, let me tell you how I ended up in that pediatrician's office on a Thursday afternoon, holding my grandson's hand a little too tight. 3 weeks earlier, none of this had crossed my mind. I'm 68 years old, retired now going on 6 years after 31 years, running the parts counter and then the whole floor at a farm equipment dealership outside Bakersfield, California. My daughter Melissa calls me stubborn. My late wife Carol used to call it paying attention, which I always figured was the nicer way of saying the same thing. Carol passed 4 years back, breast cancer, and since then Tyler has been the one bright spot that gets me out of bed some mornings. My grandson, 9 years old, front tooth gone, obsessed with dinosaurs, the way only a 9-year-old boy can be obsessed with something, could tell you the difference between a velociraptor and a Deinonychus before he could tie his shoes. Melissa married Russell about 2 years back. Second marriage for her, first for him. I'll be honest with you, I never fully warmed to Russell. Nothing I could point to, nothing I could hand you as evidence. Just a feeling, the kind you get around a man who smiles a half-second too late, like he's checking first to see if smiling is the correct response. Melissa loved him, though, and Tyler seemed to like him fine, and who was I to sit in my recliner in Bakersfield and second-guess a marriage from the outside? That Tuesday, the 14th of April, I drove out to their place in Clovis to drop off a birthday present. Tyler had turned 9 the Saturday before, and I'd been laid up with a bad hip flare, couldn't make the actual party. So, 3 days late, I loaded a wrapped box, holding a full set of dinosaur excavation kits into my truck, and made the 90-minute drive out. I rang the bell. Russell answered, phone against his ear, held up one finger, mouthed one sec, and waved me toward the living room without breaking stride on his call. I stood there a moment feeling exactly like what I was. A grandfather 3 days late to a birthday, holding a present like an apology. Tyler's room is upstairs, second door, a hand-lettered sign taped to it that says, Dinosaur Zone, knock first. I knocked. Nothing. Knocked again. Said his name. Eventually the door opened slow, and Tyler stood there and something in my chest just dropped straight through the floor. He didn't look sick. That's the thing I want you to understand, because I've turned this over in my head 1,000 times since. He didn't look sick the way a cold looks sick, red nose, watery eyes. He looked heavy. Eyes at half-mast, head tilted like it weighed more than his neck could comfortably hold, standing there swaying just slightly, the way a man sways after 4 beers he didn't need. Hey, buddy, I said, crouching down. Happy late birthday. You feeling okay? Hey, Grandpa. The words came out slow, stretched thin like taffy. M'kay, just tired. It was 2:30 in the afternoon on a school holiday, and this was a boy who 3 months ago would have been bouncing off the walls asking me to help build a triceratops out of couch cushions. I handed him the present. He opened it slower than I'd ever seen him open anything, slower than Christmas, slower than his own birthday party the year before, when he'd torn through 6 presents in 90 seconds flat. When he finally got the paper off and saw the dinosaur kits, something flickered, real excitement trying to push up through whatever fog he was sitting under, and for just a second he looked like Tyler again. These are so cool, he said. And even that came out delayed. Then he got quiet, sat down on the edge of his bed with the box in his lap, and I recognized that quiet, the kind a kid gets when he's building up the nerve to say something that scares him a little. I waited. Didn't push. I've learned that much in 68 years, that if you wait long enough, most people will tell you the truth on their own schedule. Tyler looked up at me, checking the hallway behind me first, making sure the coast was clear, and then he leaned in close the way kids do when a secret is too big for regular volume. "Grandpa," he whispered, "can you tell Russell I don't want the vitamin gummies anymore? They make my legs feel weird, and I can't stay awake in class." My heart didn't explode. I want to be clear about that, because that's not how a man my age reacts to something like this, not on the outside anyway. I just nodded, slow, the same way I'd nod if he told me he wanted cereal instead of eggs. "Okay, bud." I stood up and held out my hand. "How about we go get some ice cream, just the two of us?" I am not a man who jumps to conclusions. 31 years fixing farm equipment teaches you that half the time the noise you're hearing isn't the problem, it's just a symptom of the problem. And if you go tearing into the engine chasing the noise, you'll miss what's actually broken. But I also know what it feels like when something's wrong, that particular vibration that travels up through your hands before your head's even caught up to what you're feeling. And right then, holding my grandson's hand, walking him down that staircase, every part of me was vibrating. I walked him past the living room. Russell was still on his call, pacing by the window, laughing at something, didn't even look over. "Taking Tyler for ice cream," I said. Russell gave a thumbs up without turning around, still laughing into the phone. I buckled Tyler into his booster seat in my truck, and I did not drive to the ice cream place on Shaw Avenue like I'd said. I drove instead to Valley Children's Urgent Care, a clinic I'd taken Tyler to twice before for stitches and a bad ear infection, where I knew Dr. Nguyen and trusted her not to talk down to either one of us. I hadn't called Melissa yet, hadn't called anybody yet. First, I needed to know exactly what I was looking at before I went making noise about it. In the waiting room, Tyler fell asleep, sitting straight up in the chair beside me within 10 minutes. The kind of sudden, complete sleep that doesn't belong to a 9-year-old boy on a Tuesday afternoon after a full night's rest. I sat there very still and thought about the word vitamin and the word gummies, and how easy those two words made it for a man to hide almost anything he wanted inside a bottle shaped like a smiling bear. When Dr. Nguyen finally called us back, she looked at Tyler asleep against my shoulder, looked at the intake sheet, and ordered a full toxicology panel without me having to ask twice. "We'll know something in about 45 minutes, she said. We waited. I sat in that little exam room with my hand resting on my grandson's back, feeling it rise and fall, and I thought about every single time over the past few months that Melissa had mentioned, almost in passing, that Tyler seemed extra tired lately, that his teacher had called about him nodding off during reading time, that maybe it was a growth spurt. Kids go through phases. I thought about how many times I'd let that explanation sit there unchallenged because it was easier than asking the next question. What if I'd waited until the weekend to bring that birthday present? The door opened. Dr. Nguyen came back in holding the results, and she did exactly what I described to you at the start of this story, went quiet, set the paper down like it might not make a sound that way. "What's in it?" I said. "What did you find?" She turned the sheet around so I could read it myself, and she explained it plain. No dressing it up. Diphenhydramine, a common antihistamine, the kind found in over-the-counter allergy and sleep medicine, present in Tyler's system at a level and pattern consistent, her exact words, with regular administration over an extended period of time, likely months, not days, not a one-time accident, a pattern. I read that line 3 separate times, the way you reread something hoping the second pass will change what it says. It never does. "Is his mother home right now, doctor?" Nguyen asked, gentle but direct. "Yes." "Mr. Delgado, you understand I have a legal obligation to report this." "I understand." I met her eyes straight on. "I'm asking you for 24 hours, not to hide anything, to build something solid enough that nobody can talk their way around it." She studied me a long moment, the kind of look that's measuring whether a man is about to do something reckless or something careful. Whatever she found in my face, it must have satisfied her, because she nodded slowly. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. If I haven't heard from you or seen a police report by then, I make the call myself, and I document that you asked me to wait. That's fair, I said, and I meant it. We shook hands. I carried my sleeping grandson to the truck, and the drive back to Clovis took 26 minutes. I counted every one. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was falling apart. Understand that about me, a man doesn't run a parts department for 3 decades by falling apart when the ground shifts under him. I sat at my kitchen table in Bakersfield with the lamp turned low and a cup of coffee going cold beside my elbow, and I thought the way I used to think through a transmission problem that didn't want to reveal itself easy. What do I actually know? What do I still need to find out? And in what order do I go get it? What I knew. My grandson had been sedated, repeatedly, inside his own home, by somebody with easy daily access to him. What I didn't know yet was how long, how deep, and the question that kept circling back around no matter how I tried to set it down: why? If you've made it this far in the story, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Costs you nothing, means a lot to this channel. Drop a comment too, tell me what you would have done in my shoes. Thursday morning I called Melissa before 7, didn't tell her anything yet. Needed to hear her voice first, take her temperature before I handed her something that was going to break her world in half. Hey Dad, everything okay? Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about Tyler. He seem all right to you lately? A pause. The kind that means somebody's actually turning the question over instead of brushing it off. He's been sleepy a lot, honestly. Russell thinks it's a growth spurt. Some kids just need more sleep during one. Growth spurt. Same 2 words the doctor had already told me weren't the answer. Makes sense, I said, keeping my voice easy. Hey, would it be all right if Tyler stayed with me a week or 2? Grandpa time. Feel bad I missed his party. I could hear the relief and the warmth both in her voice at once. He'd love that, Dad. Let me talk to Russell, but I don't see why not. By 9 that morning, I sat across from a family attorney named Robert Castellanos, a man I'd used years back settling my brother's estate, sharp, careful with his words, no wasted motion. I laid it all out, the clinic visit, Dr. Nguyen's findings, photos of the lab report on my phone. He read through everything without speaking for a full 3 minutes. Then he looked up. You understand what this is, Mr. Delgado. I do. Child endangerment at minimum, and depending on what else turns up, possibly worse. Does Melissa know? Not yet. He nodded slow. Good instinct. Before you tell her, you want this documented so thoroughly there's no room for anybody to talk their way around it, including her. When a person finds out their spouse did something like this, the first move is almost always to protect the marriage before they protect the child. You want the truth so airtight that isn't an option. He was right, and I knew it the second he said it. What do I need? I asked. Everything you already have, plus a timeline, and eyes on that house if you can manage it. He slid a card across the desk. Marcus Webb, Private Investigations, Central Valley. Thorough and quiet, Castellanos said. One more thing. When Melissa calls back about Tyler staying with you, say yes immediately and get him out of that house today if you can. Already planned on it. Melissa called back at 11:40. Russell's totally fine with it, she said. Said maybe some time with Grandpa would be good for him. Called it a nice change of pace. Filed that away too. How easily they'd both handed him over without asking a single follow-up question. I picked Tyler up that afternoon. Backpack already packed, dinosaur kits tucked under his arm. He looked a little brighter than the day before already, a little more like himself. We going on an adventure, Grandpa? The best one, I told him, and meant it more ways than he knew. I want to tell you about Russell now, and I want to be fair doing it, because fair matters even when your hands are shaking with anger underneath the table. Russell grew up rough, foster system out of Sacramento, bounced through more houses than he liked to talk about, and built himself into somebody respectable through pure grinding effort, a decent sales job, a nice truck, a wife with a good career in medical billing. I liked him fine at first, want to be honest about that too. But somewhere along the way, and none of us saw it happening in real time, the life he'd built stopped feeling like something he'd earned and started feeling like something he was terrified of losing. I'm not saying that excuses one single thing he did to that boy. I'm saying I understand there's a difference between a monster and a desperate man, and desperate men do monstrous things without ever thinking of themselves as monsters. What Marcus Webb found over the following 2 days would show me exactly how desperate Russell had gotten. Marcus called me Saturday evening. "Mr. Delgado, I've got something you need to see in person." I met him at a diner off Blackstone Avenue, 20 minutes later. He slid a folder across the table. Thick, time-stamped photographs, receipts, printouts. Russell, at a casino in Tulare County, 3 separate nights over the past 2 months, a player's club card in his name, losses documented through a source Marcus wouldn't name but assured me was reliable. Beyond that, credit applications, 2 of them, denied both times, and a payday loan storefront receipt dated 2 weeks earlier. "He's underwater," Marcus said. "Deep. My read is he needed hours in the house, free and clear, nights specifically, to work a side book he's been running for a bookie out of Fresno, taking bets over a burner phone, trying to dig himself out of a hole he already dug worse, trying to climb out of the first one." "The vitamins," I said. "My guess, and it's an educated one, he needed Tyler down and quiet at night so he could use the house as his office without a kid wandering downstairs asking questions or catching him on the phone. Sedating your own stepson so you can run illegal bets from the kitchen table." I sat with that a long time. Marcus didn't rush me. Just drank his coffee and let me be a grandfather absorbing something no grandfather should ever have to absorb. Russell hadn't done this out of cruelty exactly. He'd done it out of a cornered kind of convenience, and somehow that landed even worse than if he'd simply been cruel for its own sake. "Does Melissa have any idea about the gambling?" I asked. "None, that I can find. She thinks his late nights are work calls with the East Coast office. 2 adults circling that house, one married in, one born into it, and neither one had ever once looked at that boy's slow eyes and heavy limbs and asked the obvious question." I drove home with the windows down, the Central Valley smelling like almond blossoms and cut hay, that particular April smell you only get out here. Tyler was at my house, asleep in the guest room, the real kind of sleep this time, natural, easy, one hand curled around a plastic velociraptor he'd insisted on bringing to bed. I stood in the doorway and watched him breathe a minute. Then I sat at my kitchen table and opened the same spiral notebook I used to log parts orders in for 31 years, and I wrote everything down in order, dates, names, everything doctor. Nguyen had told me, everything Marcus had just handed me. I called Castellanos and left a message. "We're ready." Then I called my daughter, not to tell her everything, not yet, just to say, "Melissa, I need you to come out here, alone, tonight." She showed up Sunday evening around 6, pulling into my driveway in her Honda, looking tired but unbothered, the way a person looks when they think they're being called out for a normal reason. Maybe Grandpa needs help with something around the house. She had no idea. Tyler was already down for the night, and what was about to be said at that table wasn't for a 9-year-old to hear. Not tonight. Not ever, if I could manage it. I'd made pot roast, the same meal I used to cook every single time life handed her something hard growing up, when her first marriage ended, when she lost her job during the layoffs back in 2009. Never told her it was a ritual. Didn't need to. Some things you just do. She came in, hugged me, said something smelled good, asked where Tyler was. "Down already," I said. "Doing better. Getting his color back." "Good," she said, smiling. "He needed this." We ate. I let her finish her plate, let her have the second helping, let her be comfortable one last time before I rearranged her whole life. Then I stood, went to the counter, and set 3 things on the table in front of her without a word. The lab results, Marcus's folder, my notebook. She looked at me, then at the papers, and picked up the lab results first, slow, the way you pick up something when part of you already suspects you don't want to know what it says. She read it. Her face didn't crumble right away. It just went still, the way a pond goes still right before something breaks the surface of it. She set it down, opened Marcus's folder next, closed it again after the second photograph. The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycling on. Then she stood up very slowly, said, "Excuse me a minute," and walked down the hallway to the bathroom and shut the door. I sat at that table and waited. "Take your time, sweetheart. Take all the time this needs." She was in there long enough that I refilled my coffee twice, long enough the kitchen clock ticked through most of 10 minutes. When she came back, her eyes were red, but her voice came out steady. She sat down, looked at the folder, without touching it again. Does Tyler know what was in the gummies? No. He just knows they made him feel weird, and he didn't want them anymore. She nodded once. Slow. Good. He doesn't need to know the rest yet. And right there I saw my daughter clearly. Not the exhausted working mother who'd let growth spurts sit unquestioned for months, but the real one underneath all of it. The one who'd been carrying more than she let on and just needed someone to finally hand her the whole truth at once. How long have you known? She asked. Since Tuesday. She looked up sharp. You've sat on this since Tuesday? Needed it solid, before I brought it to you. Didn't want to hand you something you could talk yourself out of. She was quiet a moment, then let out a short breath that was almost a laugh, humorless. You built the whole case before you even told me there was a case. Habit, I said. She looked at the folder one last time, pushed it aside, and pulled out her phone. I need that lawyer's number, she said. That's my girl. Melissa didn't confront Russell that night, or Monday. She spent 3 days at my place with Tyler, sleeping in her old childhood room, watching him carry his dinosaurs around the kitchen while she drank her coffee, just watching him, storing it up. She spoke with Castellanos twice, moved what money she could into an account in her name alone, photographed documents from the home office on a visit while Russell was at work, did everything careful and quiet, no wasted moves. She learned that from somewhere. Thursday morning, once Tyler was safely at school, she drove back to that house in Clovis alone and sat down across from Russell at the same kitchen table where he'd been running his book on borrowed nights. She told me everything that evening, word for word, and I'll tell it to you the same way. He was on his phone when she came in, looked up, smiled that half-second late smile. Normal Thursday morning. She slid the lab report across to him without a word. He looked at it, looked at her, and she watched the smile drain out of his face in real time. He started talking immediately. That was his first mistake. Straight into explaining before he even knew what she actually had. Mel, I can explain. He wasn't sleeping well, and I just wanted. She let the silence sit a full 10 seconds before she set Marcus's folder on top of the lab report. He opened it, saw the casino photos, and went completely still. I trusted you, she said, her voice never rising, not once. With my son, with my house, with my name. She stood up. You used every part of that. Mel, please, I love him. I would never hurt him on purpose. You drugged him, for months. So, you could run bets out of my kitchen without him walking in on it. She picked her keys up off the counter. Whatever story you need to tell yourself about, that is yours to carry, not mine. She walked to the door. He said, Are you taking him from me? She stopped, turned around one last time. You did that, she said, not me. I want to tell you how this ended. Not the version with fireworks, the real version, because real justice in this country doesn't come with a soundtrack. It comes with paperwork and court dates and a lot of waiting rooms. But it comes. Full custody was awarded to Melissa within 70 days. Russell's attorney tried arguing financial stress, gambling addiction as a mitigating circumstance, a man in crisis rather than a man who'd knowingly sedated a child. Castellanos put Dr. Wen's records on the record, put the toxicology reports in front of the judge, put 6 months of documented purchase history from 3 different pharmacies on the table. The judge didn't need convincing twice. Supervised visitation only, pending a full investigation by California's Department of Social Services. Child endangerment charges were filed by the Fresno County District Attorney's Office. The bookie Russell had been working for, once investigators started pulling threads, cut him loose immediately to protect his own operation, gave up records without hesitation. Cowards protect themselves first, every single time. I've found that to be true my whole life. The house in Clovis sold as part of the divorce settlement, and Russell walked away with a fraction of what he'd built his image around. Melissa and Tyler moved into a smaller place 15 minutes from mine. And some Sundays now Tyler comes over and we build dinosaur skeletons out of the excavation kit at my kitchen table, and he falls asleep sometimes on my couch afterward. And every single time now, I sit there a minute and just watch him breathe. Easy and natural, the way a 9-year-old is supposed to sleep. Not because anybody's making him, because he's finally safe enough to. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and tell me down in the comments. Would you have waited 24 hours like I did? Or would you have blown the door down that same afternoon? Either way, I'll see you in the next one.